Hello, as mentioned, my name is Intars Garbovskis. I'm leading ACCENTURE Latvia security practice. And for the next 20 or 25 minutes, I'll try to give the key highlights from one of the most recent researches or studies we've done together with BOTNET Institute. Key things that I will cover today are cost landscape of cybercrime from one side, and from other side, the investments that companies are doing to make sure we can defend against the people who are trying to steal the information or disrupt the business. So let's start with a couple of numbers. What we have found out during the financial fiscal year, basically 2017, number of security breaches, as you can imagine, has increased. So as we found out on average across the organizations that participated in this study, now we see that average number of security breaches this year was 130. So basically, on average, this is the number of breaches each organization, as part of our survey, actually experienced. So if we look back a little bit, comparing to the last 5 years, the increase is almost 100%. So we can see it's 91%. When we look from spend, what it costs to the companies, so we see the latest number is $11.7 million US dollars. It means that this is the annual cost that each company has spent to manage data breaches. So again, it means that there are companies who are spending less, but there are also companies who are spending much more than those 11 million per year to manage security breaches and make sure incidents are resolved. And also here we see a quite huge increase, more than 60% spend related to managed data breaches are really increasing, and that's one of the reasons why we need to think where we invest. Is it effective? To make sure that we can be ahead of bad guys. So here again, as I mentioned, the latest number we have recovered, it's 11 million plus US dollars that each company spent to manage the data breach. But looking back 5 years, you can see how that number actually increased from year to year. So basically, we see there are no year when this number was going in the opposite direction. Looking to a bit more detailed view comparing country to country. So these are the countries covered by our study this year. And obviously, United States is the top one, where the costs of data breaches is the highest. But we can look also not so far closer to the Europe, Germany, France, Italy. So those numbers are also really, really high. So that's one of the things that highlights that also we here in Latvia actually are not very far from all the things that are happening around us. Same view, but a little bit from percentage, looking how this number of spend increased in each country comparing to the previous year. So you can see that actually not less than 20% is the number of percentage points that shows how spend on managing data breaches increased in each country. On average, it is 27+% this year, so it shows that companies are spending more and more to detect, also contain and resolve the data breaches. Going forward, from perspective of industries, this year 15 industries were covered in our study, and as we can see, and which is also quite natural, that financial services industry is the top one, where the spend related to the data breaches is the highest, which is just a little bit below 20 million per year per company. And also utilities and energy is the second sector where we see basically these two are most expensive ones and actually most interesting ones for people who want to damage either reputation or get some valuable information from those companies. Also, here again, some of the industries were not represented with high participation, so please don't treat that as really absolute data. Basically, this is just shows the indication from those companies who participated in the survey. This is the breakdown across the industries. Then we also try to understand what are the most common or frequent attacks that companies experience. Here you can see malware is the top one, which actually brings the most of the cost for the companies to deal with data breaches and security incidents related with malware. Also, phishing and social engineering is quite common. I'm sure that all of you have heard what it is and probably either recognize something like that or experience something related with social engineering. These are the top two areas or types of attacks that companies actually experience, at least in 2017. Also, comparing to 2016, you can see that there are just few that has shown some downwards trend, but most of the incident types are increasing. Stolen devices nowadays are not the top. Think how information is leaked or stolen. So as you can see, there are more advanced ways how to get the desired information from the companies. Again, as noted, then malicious code is the top one, and also here you can see that number of days, what it takes for the companies, at least those who participated in the survey, it's around more than 55 days to get back to business as normal once malware attack, specifically malicious code incident happened in the company. Something similar with malicious intruders, insiders, people inside the company who really have access to something that they probably are responsible for. So such type of things require most of the highest number of days for the companies to get back to the business as normal. Of course, also ransomware is one of the types, attacker types, which requires quite long time, but it is not so high comparing to malicious code or malicious insiders, for example. Again, back to numbers and money. Malware and web-based attacks are the attack types which actually cost companies most. So basically, these two things are most common, and looking at the costs and spend that companies did this year to manage malware or web-based attack incidents or data breaches, this is basically costing most of the money for the companies. Moving forward, what's the top or most expensive consequence? As all of you may imagine, it's still information. Either it's personal data of companies' internal people or customer data. So anyway, the loss of information is the most, say, expensive consequence when something related to data breach happens. So of course, business disruption as well is one of the negative effects. When something happens, then of course it's also disturbing and impacting business. But coming back, so we can see that the bad thing is that the importance of that and the number of dollars actually is increasing to deal with the information theft. So we can see headlines every day. So basically that also just justifies that this is the top attack where money is spent by the companies to deal with that. Going forward, still looking where the costs are going and where the spend by companies are going. Most of the money is going to detect data breaches as well as to contain, basically meaning make sure that this is not spreading further or trying to localize or minimize the further effects. So these are the two areas. Of course, also recovery is one of the things that costs quite a lot. So meaning that if something happens, then these are the top three items where companies are spending money to get back to business as normal. What to do? So that's the next question. It's clear everyone knows that the number of breaches is increasing. Total costs of dealing with data breaches is also increasing. We also looked at the ways how companies are trying to avoid or minimize the cost of data breaches. So and here we asked what are the technologies that you are investing or deploying within your company. And here we can see that security intelligence systems and systems related with identity and access management are those where companies confirm that they have deployed such type of systems completely. But we also see that perimeter controls, it's also quite many of the companies have invested and implemented appropriate controls as well. Why it's interesting? So here we also analyzed, it's clear that companies are investing huge amount of money to deal with incidents and also try to make sure that they are not happening. But here we see that in many cases, those investments or priorities for investments are a little bit misdirected. If we look how much cost effectiveness it might give. For example, we noticed that companies are investing huge amount of money in advanced perimeter controls. However, the return of such type of investments is not so huge. Basically, it means that investing there doesn't mean that you will be able to minimize the cost of data breach significantly. So it means that investments are done, but they are not done in the right directions. As we can see, the most highest potential is in security intelligence systems. It is clear that companies are investing, but they are not investing enough, because we can see that potential for decreasing cost of data breach by implementing or investing in such type of systems would bring quite a lot of value, which is not actually used. So the key message here is that investments are done to the high level, but in many cases they are done without deeper analysis what it will give back once something will happen that we don't want. So basically, that was one of the key objectives from this survey, to analyze and help companies look at their investments. First of all, try to justify that this is the actual situation. But if we will invest more in something that really brings back more cost savings or more efficiency, then might be that this is valuable to invest in those technologies or directions which really brings that return on investment. And this, as we can see here as well, that top things are security intelligence systems, and also extensive use of cyber analysis, user behavior analysis tools, which really has big potential if you are investing there, that either there is a less chance that data breach will happen, you will be able to detect it or prevent it, and also this brings quite big cost savings in the future. So just to conclude, what does it mean? What are suggestions for the companies, and what is the outcome of our survey? What we see that the numbers to deal and resolve incidents is quite high. What it means really disruption of the business, loss of data. Companies are not able to recover as quickly as they want. So basically those investments should be balanced, looking to the directions and technologies which really make sense and would bring cost savings. Of course, compliance is important, as also mentioned in one of the previous sessions at the beginning of the conference, but don't overinvest, because this will not bring as much cost saving as you would like. Of course, this should be put in place, but this should not be the basis how the security programs are implemented and defined. And of course, nowadays, that's nothing new. Innovations, artificial intelligence, these are the directions where we need to think already now. Again, that's clear that this is not the question if we need to do that, but the question is when this will be our daily life. From our side, yeah, there are 3 basic steps to be followed looking ahead, based on the things that we have analyzed and based on the outcome of the survey or study. Of course, there must be a very strong baseline and foundational things related to the information security, starting from authentication, identity and access management, security intelligence systems. That should be basis, and investment should go there. But of course, innovations to make sure we are ahead of hackers, you don't need to forget about that. So innovation, in addition to the foundational or basic security things, should be kept in mind as well. Testing, without that, even if we would invest and implement any technologies, this will not work. So suggestion is really keep pressure and continue extensive and rigorous security testing activities across the company on all levels, not only application levels, but also infrastructure, code level, etc. And of course, innovations, as I mentioned, is the future, and that's the message, to make sure we are ahead. We are first who are implementing those artificial intelligence tools, make sure that we are ahead of the hackers. That's in short from my side. Just at the end, give some numbers, as many of you might have questions, what we analyzed, who participated, etc. This is not the first year we are doing that. It's already think, 8th year in a row. Here we are looking at companies, large-sized companies, basically more than 1,000 employees. That's why probably for some of you those numbers look too high or unreal, but these are really numbers of organizations, large-scale organizations, which are really experiencing such type of data breaches every day. Thanks a lot, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Let's thank Intars. Now, Intars, there's one thing you should know about this session. Now, at the end of this session, I want actually you to be back on the stage somewhere about 1 p.m. or something like that. So we'll have a quick chat regarding some questions. And people can just jot them down right now so they can ask them later. Okay. Here's your certificate.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your keynote.
Yeah, thank you.